are taking over your airwaves. In 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the studios in the wrestling capital of the South, it's another terrific episode of The BENGEBUSTER Show. Please welcome your host, Tony Binge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The BENGEBUSTER Show. I am super excited about this week's show because it is a milestone. It is something we've been planning now for some time, and conflicting schedules have prevented the BENGEBUSTER Show of having this episode. But tonight we are going to be celebrating our 100th episode, and before I can get the celebration underway, I got to bring on my co-host, my cohort, my co-conspirator. I'm talking about Chris Rock and Roll Plano. Chris, what's going on?
Tony, how are you? Oh my God, terrific, Tony. I'm so excited. The 100th show tonight. We've hit the century mark. And you know what? When you told me it was the 100th show, I thought back when you first called me years ago, or a while back ago, and said, Chris, hey, I want to do a podcast. You want to join me? We'll do a couple. We'll see how it goes. And I don't know. It may go. It may not. Who knows? You want to do it with me? I said, absolutely. And now we're at number 100. I can't believe it, Tony. We are rocking and rolling, brother.
Man, it has been a wild ride. We have had so many tremendous guests on this show, and I have been in talks with the people that run the great, big, huge WrestleCade, and they have said it, that the BENGEBUSTER Show is going to be one of the main podcast shows to help produce and promote WrestleCade. So I'm excited. And fans at home wondering, well, what's that mean? Well, that means, guys, in the next few weeks, few months, we're going to be bringing on some of the big stars that are going to be there live at WrestleCade. That is coming up here in the next few weeks. Red Hot Tim Blaze is going to be joining Chris and myself on the BENGEBUSTER Show, and he's bringing some people with him. So you got to make sure you download the episode, like us on Facebook, and as soon as I have that schedule of guests coming on the show, I will definitely post that on the Facebook page so that the BENGEBUSTER listeners will be the first ones to know who that big guest is going to be each week up until WrestleCade weekend. And at WrestleCade weekend, you got to come there, buy a ticket, come check out the festivities, and shake hands and take pictures with me and Rock and Roll Chris Plano, because we'll be there live and in color at WrestleCade. Now, Chris, it's been a few weeks since we've had a BENGEBUSTER show due to travel and vacations and just crazy things going on in my life and your life right now. But hey, we are here tonight to celebrate 100th episode, and we're taking it back. We're kind of going to do a double episode here. We're going to try to cram this in 1 hour if we can. But before we get into the show, a couple things. Today is Thursday. I'm sorry, Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, July 28th. And Chris, the bad news today, the bass player from one of our favorite bands, ZZ Top, Dusty Hill, passed away unexpectedly in his sleep in Houston, Texas. Chris, I mean, I don't know about you, man, but when I read that, my heart literally broke, because ZZ Top was such a big part of my childhood growing up, just like pro wrestling.
Absolutely. God, what a blow to the concert industry today. And God, ZZ Top, they're so legendary, Tony. They've been on, gosh, their final tour, it seems like forever now. And who could forget the fuzzy guitars and the long beards and the nostalgic voice and everything that was ZZ Top's, and She's Got Legs, and I mean, gosh, it just kind of hits you in the gut, and it's like, wow, this is the reality. Like, this is happening. This is going on, and boy, I don't know if ZZ Top would ever even make. I don't know. I don't know where they even go from here. Will they even tour again or try to even do any more shows? But it's almost like the heart and soul of the band. It's just gone like that.
Well, Chris, I did see that ZZ Top was scheduled to perform tonight, and I believe Ohio, and that show has been canceled, and fans have been refunded their money. So if that's any telltale sign, it sounds to me like that could be the end of ZZ Top. I mean, how would you replace Dusty Hill? Because there's been a lot of bands come and go, and our favorite bands, Motley Crue, Poison, Kiss, they've all been around for a long time, but they haven't been the original members from day one. But ZZ Top, I mean, man, that's got to be a milestone in itself, that a band could stay together, play together 50 years with the same lineup.
It's not even heard of, really. It's really not even heard of today at all. I mean, the same lineup for 50 years with no replacements or substitutions, it makes it very difficult for a band like ZZ Top to find replacements. Yeah, you could throw money at performers and guitarists and singers, but to find the replacements or partial replacements, they're really going to be challenged going forward. And, just, Tony, I mean, how many deaths have we seen over the last, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, just overall, and just rock and roll? It's staggering. It really is. And here's the stat. I don't want to be morbid at all with anyone on the podcast, but God, is this going to stop, or is this kind of an ongoing trend we're in now?
Right. Yeah. And I thought about that too, Chris. It's like, just yesterday I saw that Joey Jordison from Slipknot passed away. And he was, right. I mean, he was younger than you and I. So, it's just a crazy time, and they're not really saying why and how and when. And then, 2 weeks ago, when we had planned on doing our 100th episode, we weren't able to do it, because, we had I had some issues come up, but the death of Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. I mean, that's another part of our childhood gone. And if it look at Mr. Wonderful, was it for him, WrestleMania 1 probably wouldn't have been as successful as it was, because he and Piper were the main catalyst for this feud with Hulk Hogan. I mean, Hogan had Hogan had Mr. T and Jimmy Snuka, but without Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper's heat, I don't think that main event would have drew that well.
No, absolutely not. I mean, gosh, rest in peace, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, one of the toughest guys in the professional wrestling business in and out of the ring, and without a doubt. And
definitely don't ever call him Paula. He was such I love his heat, man.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Tony. I'm not gonna say as a teenager I wasn't sitting in some crowds up in Connecticut in the WWF, and I might not have spouted it out once or twice. But you know what? He loved it because he loved the heat.
Yeah. So, and regardless, and I know a lot of my listeners out here right now are going to be like, "What, Tony? Are you kidding me right now when you say this?" But I'm going to go out on a limb. 2 things that Paul Orndorff done that I thoroughly enjoyed. Now, no, I did enjoy the WWE stuff. I did, but when he and Pretty Paul Roma got together as a tag team known as Pretty Wonderful. Man, that team had a great hook. They had good heat. They won the tag team titles, and they had a awesome theme song. I mean, how could you not listen to this music and just like, oh yeah, this sounds cool? But they end up winning the WCW tag team titles, and matter of fact, when I went to Starrcade '93, I got to see them in action when they first put the team together. and the Assassin was their manager, and they took on Marcus Buff Bagwell. Of course, he wasn't Buff then. He was Marcus Alexander, and Too Cold Scorpio in the opening event at Starrcade 93 in Charlotte at the Charlotte Coliseum. And incidentally, while I'm getting to that subject, let's talk about what's happening here in the Queen City tonight, Chris. AEW has invaded Crockett territory, and our good friend of the Rock and Roll Express, Robert Gibson, he posted a picture of the line of people outside of the Bojangles Coliseum there in downtown Charlotte, on Independence Boulevard. Or, of course, originally, to me, it's going to always be known as the Independence Arena, not Bojangles Coliseum. But AEW's there tonight, Chris. Tell some of the listeners at home, like, how over AEW is right now in Charlotte.
Whew. Let me tell you, Tony, I know we're recording this show right now, but the last 2 hours, 2.5 hours at the Bojangles Coliseum tonight has been on fire. I don't know how else to put it beside those two words. Sold out crowd at the Bojangles Coliseum. They were packed to the rafters. An old Jim Crockett Promotions arena. They got so many memories of that arena that ghosts will talk to you. But with that said, All Elite Wrestling came to town out of Jacksonville, Florida. Charlotte was on the main stage tonight on TNT Network, on Turner Network Television. Chris Jericho actually was just in the main event. Chris Jericho did win in a bloodbath. He did win, but hey, you're seeing some competition here with WWE. AEW is going into major markets now, post-COVID, and they're not scared. They're going to be in New York next month at Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York City, right outside of Brooklyn and Madison Square Garden in New York. They're taking their show on the road. They're doing their weekly show once a week. They're bringing up these young guys. And AEW is pulling some WWE guys that are coming off a contract into their fold as well. So there's a lot going on in the pro wrestling business, but hey, a great night for Charlotte. They were on the main stage on national television for a couple hours, and great for pro wrestling. And I'm so happy for All Elite Wrestling, but I'm really so happy saw Matt Hardy tonight, and great to still see him on national television. I know he was tickled pink back in Charlotte, and my history with the Hardy Boys and stuff. And hey, look, it's 2021. They're still doing their thing, and they're cashing checks. Yeah,
they're doing it. And I think at this point, and with COVID going away and everything, I think everyone's ready. The people are ready for another major promotion to run up against the WWE. And I believe with all my heart, AEW is the company to be able to do that. They've got a huge following. Everybody there is over. But the most important thing that I've heard a lot of people say is that AEW are more in tune with their fans than the other company. That's saying a lot during this time, because with just the way wrestling is ran now, and as a whole, it's so much different than it was 20 years ago. And I believe the people are ready to see wrestling like it was in the 80s and 90s. And man, I would love to see another Monday Night War, because that each week, you want to turn on to see what was happening.
Tony, if I could chime in real quick here, I love the last few lines you just said, because you hit kind of a red button topic. WWE still promotes their talent, and that's what they are. They're not even WWE superstars anymore. It's WWE talent. And they promote them still in a somewhat old school way, where it's controlled by WWE. Here's the difference. AEW has their talent, and they promote their talent. They do their thing, but then their talent also promotes themselves on social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I can go on and on with these platforms, and they're influencers on social media. They're influencing their own fan base. And then that fan base comes to the shows when they come to town. So it's almost like there's double marketing going on.
Yeah.
To an extent. So the AEW talent, yes, they are marketed by AEW, but they're their own influencers. When you look at someone like Kenny Omega, Matt Hardy, and Chris Jericho, and even like Sammy Guevara, and I can go down and down the list. The Young Bucks as well, the tag team, and even Tony Schiavone, to an extent, they are influencers, and that is really what is happening on the cutting edge to social media, to what is drawing crowds in. And not even wrestling, NASCAR is doing it too with their young drivers as well. Social media is the new platform to bring that audience in. And I think that's something that the WWE is a little behind with, because they control their talent and what they can do on the social media stage.
Yeah, I agree. And everything there is so time consumed as far as what they can actually do. And I miss those days where the promoters went out there and said, okay, this is what we want, go do it. It wasn't writer scripting the entire thing. And I believe that AEW is kind of old school like that. I don't believe the whole thing is scripted. I believe that they pretty much let the wrestlers go out there and do what they do. So, man, I'm telling you, Chris, mark my words. I want everybody to pay attention to what I'm about to say. It's now July the 28th. We're recording this podcast. It's 10:11 p.m. And I'm going to tell you right now, Chris, within the next several months, you are going to see a huge explosion in the pro wrestling business. I mean, it's getting ready to take off. It's going to be hot. The pandemic is lifting. People are getting back out there. The concerts are getting back out there because, I mean, Chris, you yourself have already been out to a couple here in Charlotte. And you were just at the Dave Matthews concert just like a couple days ago. And what was it, Chris? Was it sold out or what?
Tony, actually, we'll track back to Friday. I did go out to the PNC Music Pavilion here in Charlotte. They had Luke Bryan out there. Everyone knows who Luke Bryan is, whatever, American Idol, whatever he's on, whatever he's doing, all that national scene stuff. And hey, Luke came out there, 16,000 strong. I did not go into the show. I tailgated out in the parking lot, but I wanted to just see what the scene was. But then the next night, Dave Matthews Band came to town, and oh my God, 20,000 strong at PNC. I walked in, I was like, oh boy, we're back to the old days here and a few years ago, and people are ready to get out. People are spending money, and people aren't shy to spend money, and people want to be entertained. Whatever that entertainment fix is for them, they're going to go out there and get it, because this COVID thing has really done a lot of things to people, both mentally, physically, socially, and they want to get out and feel normal again. In the professional wrestling scene, whether it be on the national level, the independent level, and everywhere in between, are going to benefit from it, because people just want to freaking get out and be around other people and have a good time and go home and say, we had a great time tonight. And man, I think everyone's going to benefit from this down the road. And I think the sky's the limit.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. And you talk about wrestling being over. I know the last couple of weeks I didn't get to record a podcast and let everyone know what I was doing. But let me tell you, Chris, 2 weeks ago, man, I was like Coca-Cola. I was all over. On Saturday night, let me go back and on the times or the date. 2 weeks ago on July the 17th, I wrestled in front of our fans. Were finally back for NAWA. You know, NAWA is our number one company on our show. But they had this big show back, welcoming the fans back into the arenas. We were sold out. People were standing room only for a great night of wrestling action. And on top of that, I hit a milestone that night. Okay. A few weeks earlier, we had Dangerous E. Corey Edsel on the podcast, and he and I talked about how we couldn't believe how we've known each other so many years but never wrestled against each other. Well, the promoters of NAWA heard the podcast, and they made that come true. And, of course, Corey Edsel and myself had a singles match, and it lasted a few minutes. And I have to tell you, man, Corey is one tough competitor. I really didn't know how tough he was until I stepped in the ring with him. And, of course, you know, if you talk to Corey, he might tell you I cheated. But if you ask me, cheating only counts if you get caught. And I didn't get caught, but I did get the 1, 2, 3. So, Corey Edsel, if you're listening, hey, man, whenever you're ready to do it again, I'm ready. That was a great time and a lot of fun. And on top of that, fans, Corey Edsel is coming back to the Binge Buster show here in the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that. Incidentally, Corey Edsel's episode a few weeks ago is still right now to this day has the record for the most downloads since this podcast has been running for the last couple of years. So that right there in itself says a lot about that guy. Love him to death.
Hey, you know what, Tony? Man, I'm so happy you got in the ring with him. And you know what? You're a stand-up man because you're going to give him that return match. And who knows? He might come out victorious in that second match. And then there's going to be a third match for the tiebreaker. But with that said, you know what I love about Corey?
What's that?
He was straight up with us.
Oh, yeah.
He was straight up with us and told us how it was. And he was raw that night, and that resonated with all our listeners and the fans, and that's what they want to hear. They want to hear how it really goes down. Yeah, everyone likes the fluff every now and then, but man, I that was a great interview, and you could probably bring Corey on one every 3 or 4 months, and we would still be entertained.
Oh yeah, for sure, and I can't wait. And I was talking about big things happening in the wrestling world. Well, big things are happening with the NAWA, and later on in the in next couple of weeks, I'm going to tell everyone about what's happening. But I will tell you this, give you people a little hint. NAWA is going to be doing a huge show in Lenore, North Carolina, coming up in just a few months. And headlining that big show, Chris, is going to be none other than WWE Hall of Famers, the greatest tag team of all time. I'm talking about Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. The Rock and Roll Express are coming to Lenore, and who knows? They might be stepping in the foot with yours truly, or it may be somebody else. But I've heard they have an open contract, and they are ready to come to NAWA. NAWA has had Ricky Morton there a few times, but not anyone like the whole team of Ricky and Robert. I'm excited about that. It's always a good time when you got them two in the same building. And not only that, if them two are on the building or on that card, Chris, you know what's happening. The place is going to sell out. So make sure, you fans, you stay tuned and listen as the weeks come on, and I'll be releasing the date, the time, and the event information for the NAWA with the Rock and Roll Express. And who knows, they may have a few more people signed by the time that we are able to talk about that show. Now, let's get into this week's podcast, Chris, as when you go back and you look at the, as we were talking a little bit ago about how wrestling's about to explode, or we feel like wrestling's about to explode. In 1996, wrestling hit a major explosion with the debut of the nWo. That's right, Chris. The New World Order, commonly known as the NWO, was a professional wrestling stable that originally consisted of Hollywood Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash. The stable originated in World Championship Wrestling with the gimmick of a group of unsanctioned wrestlers aiming to take over and control WCW. Tonight, we're going to talk about how important the NWO was and the rise and fall of the NWO, coming up right now on the Binge Buster Show. All right, Chris, NWO, tell me your biggest memory or the one thing the NWO done when they done it, you said, oh yeah, they have arrived.
Well, Tony, I have two memories. You know, the first one is watching WCW Nitro and Kevin Nash and Scott Hall walking down through the crowd to the front row. I think they had a popcorn in one hand, a beer in the other. If I'm not mistaken, I might be a little bit off. I think they had a couple of ticket stubs in their hand, didn't they? If I'm not mistaken, with Doug Dillinger.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, you're right. But before that happened, there was a match in the ring, and Scott Hall just walked out and told him that he was there. He says, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. And those were that was Scott Hall's first promo. In WCW as Scott Hall of the NWO, and then as another week or so went by, he gets on there and talks to Eric Bischoff and tells him that he's got another guy coming, and it was then of course it was Kevin Nash, and then the big swerve, the one person that you never thought would be an NWO member was the biggest face at the time in WCW, Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Well, he wasn't Hollywood then, but Hulk Hogan. Never in my wildest dreams would I ever thought that it could be, Hulk Hogan, but it was. And my gosh, it friggin' took off.
Absolutely. No, and yes, and I appreciate you going back to some of what happened leading up to. What sits in, I think, in my mind was when Hall and Nash held their ticket stubs up to Doug Dillinger at ringside.
Oh, yes. That was a good spot. I like that.
That cements in my mind, okay, this is the real deal here. This storyline is moving forward. Something is going to happen here. And then the next storyline is when Hogan is walking down to the ring. Albeit, if you watch it several times over, that particular segment on WCW, a nervous Hulk Hogan walking to the ring at that time, because, it's like, what are we going to do with them? We've got the biggest star in professional wrestling right now. We've got Hulk Hogan, and that's all the WCW knew at that time. We've got the biggest star from the WWF. What are we going to do with this guy? He could fight Hall and Nash and try to clean the whole thing out, or I don't know. And then Hogan comes in. Everyone thinks he's going to clear house. Savage getting beat down. Sting was down and out, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Exactly.
In that particular segment. I mean, it was just like a massacre going on. Well, Hogan gets in the ring and he just demolishes Savage right in the middle of the ring.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I was watching over the weekend, I watched the Stone Cold Steve Austin Broken Skull sessions with Kevin Nash, and they were talking about the night that Hogan turned his back on WCW, turn his back on the fans and join WCW or join the NWO. But there that night he dropped the leg on Savage 3 times. But the one thing that Steve Austin and Kevin Nash talked about that I didn't even pick up on was the fact when Hogan covered Savage. If you go back and watch the tape, Chris, I didn't pick up on it at the time, but then when I went back and watched it, I'm like, holy moly, he did it. But Hogan kind of disrespected Savage when he covered him because he covered him a little bit.
Yeah,
he covered him a little high. He put his crotch right in his face, and that was kind of like he was putting going over on him as far as being disrespectful. But at the time, I never looked at it like that until they mentioned it. Now, when I went back and looked, I'm like, holy moly, which in turns tells me something. Hey, I might get some heat one day. I might do somebody. No, I couldn't. I'd never do anybody like that. I'm just joking.
I can't speak on behalf of anyone on this podcast or for Hulk Hogan or for WCW or even for the WWF at that time. I think Hogan was like, in the back of his mind, he was probably wondering, and it wasn't about him. If he joined the NWO, I think he was wondering what it would do for the professional wrestling business as a whole. And I say that as an outsider, and I lose that loosely because they were calling themselves the outsiders at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Hogan still might have been worried in '96 if the fans would have turned against professional wrestling for what he did more from a cultural mainstream reason versus anything else. It wasn't about WCW making money, WWF making money. I think it was kind of sitting in the back of his mind, how would the fans react? Because, Tony, the most scrupulous fans in the world are professional wrestling fans.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They're going to turn on someone in a dime. So it was either going to fly or it was going to flop. I really think there was no in the middle to the storyline of this.
Yeah, I agree. With you.
Because Hogan had a lot of still WWF fans at that time. And I think that was still kind of lingering. I could be wrong in what I'm saying, but you still kind of looked at him to an extent as he was a WWF guy.
Right. And the thing about it is, a lot of those Southern wrestling fans, WCW fans, even though Hogan came to WCW as a babyface, they didn't buy into him. I remember being in Charlotte on a Monday Nitro main event, Sting and Hulk Hogan against Arn Anderson and Ric Flair. Now I know we're in Flair country, and it was right here at the Bojangles Arena. But I remember being on that card, and this is live TV. You got Hogan and Sting, who Sting's the biggest babyface there is, right? When they came out to face Flair and Anderson, the boos, like Sting came out, they cheered Sting. But when Hogan came out, the boos came from all around the whole arena, and WCW had to turn the sound down, but they still couldn't turn the sound down enough to drown out the boos. And you could just look at see the look on Flair and Anderson's face, going, man, we're the heels. We're
bad.
Yeah, exactly. And at the time they were teasing the idea of turning Hogan heel because just a week or so prior to that show, Hogan came out wearing all black and But then he came back out at that show wearing the red and yellow. But the fans, they didn't care. I mean, they hated him. So when he turned heel, that was the best thing he could have done. He should have done that when he first came in, my opinion, because it would have been even more over than the NWO got. But
right. Yeah.
But looking at the NWO, I think the NWO would have stayed hot had they not drowned it with so many other people joining in. Now, it made sense if WWE guys came in, joined the NWO, buy into that, yes. But when people within WCW started turning and joining, it almost it got jaded, you know?
Oh no! I mean, the NWO turned into a three-ring circus. I mean, literally, it did. I mean, once Hogan got in, and then it almost kind of felt like, all right, well, all of Hogan's buddies are going to be NWO members. I mean, and then it's like, here's Elizabeth, and it's just like, what's going on here? It's like, it was this really unique group of a few guys, and then it just turned into like everyone was an NWO member, and it got to the point where they were doing so much merchandise sales and buy rates on pay-per-views that they pumped it up so much that it almost freaking exploded.
Yeah. Well,
like
Chris,
these guys aren't even, some of the guys on there like Conan and stuff. I mean, yeah, great wrestlers, but are they NWO worthy? No, not even close. Come on now.
Right. And Chris, you talk about souvenir sales. During that time, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, but I think the two biggest selling T-shirts of 96, 97, without a doubt, NWO and Austin 316. Those two shirts, man, were so over. It was crazy. But before we go any further, I want to touch base on this real fast. So the night that Hogan turned and joined the NWO, I think, in my opinion, he cut the best promo that he ever cut. And if you go back, fans, and look at some of our other podcasts, we talk about it. And as a matter of fact, I think I play it on one of the podcasts. But I just want to talk. I want to hit a few notes on that right here. When Hogan came out, done the leg drop on Savage, got the 1, 2, 3 without the referee even being in the ring, Gene Okerlund, who was the main voice of WWE all those years, now he's the voice of WCW, gets in the ring and says, "Hogan, excuse me, what in the world are you thinking?" And Hogan had the best, and this right here set the tone and let the people know that Hogan is 100% heel right here when he says, "Mean Gene, the first thing you need to do is tell these people to shut up if you want to hear what I got to say." But it's the way he said those words, man. As soon as he said it, you could just hear the people just explode. And when he said that, that is when the trash and the cans and the bottles and everything else started flying to the ring. And Hogan was such a quick thinker. And the cool thing is later on, he's trying to tell them why he turned. But then to really get the heat from the people, he says, "As far as I'm concerned, all this crap in the ring represents these fans out here. And for 2 years, he held his head high. He did everything for the charities. He did everything for the kids. And the reception he got when he came out here, you fans can stick it, brother." And right there, that solidified him as a bona fide heel. And at that point in time, Hogan, Hall, and Nash were the number one heel group. They surpassed the Horsemen. They surpassed the Dungeon of Doom. And now they are the new face of heels in WCW. And from that moment on, had they stuck with those three, or maybe just added like X-Pac and maybe Randy Savage and left it there, I think the NWO would probably still be running strong. But they put too many people in. It was just once they started putting so many people in, Chris, I feel like it just took the heat away from them.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, they almost turned themselves. It was a fraternity at one point of just guys. Oh, they had Elizabeth, but let me tell you something. You go back to that interview. Let's not kid anyone here. Only between you and I, Mean Gene helped make that interview.
Oh, without a doubt, and that's why they put him in the ring.
Without a doubt. He led Hogan to what Hogan exactly needed to say.
Yes.
And that's fine. And, everything's 50-50 hindsight here. I mean, because at that particular moment, WCW, I would think as a company, Eric Bischoff, whoever's at the higher levels, they didn't know where this was going. They were throwing a pond in the water because they were using, in essence, WWF guys that were let go out of contract, albeit they had the biggest name in the business. They did.
Yeah.
In Hogan. But I think there was still some speculation that this could falter. This may not flow on the bigger scene. But what did Vince McMahon do? He pounded them back with Stone Cold Steve Austin in one punch.
Yep.
I've got one guy dressed in black, bald head, albeit a wrestler that worked in the NWA and
right.
WCW. I mean, it's kind of laughable in a way. But at the end of the day, the NWO, that particular interview, that particular night, they had as much heat as the Four Horsemen would ever have in the ring. And I felt like we were back 10, 12 years ago in the NWA.
Mm-hmm.
And people you don't see that anymore. People throwing things. They were throwing things in the ring.
It was real. It was a gimmick, but it was so
emotional.
Real. Yeah.
And this is what Hogan was nervous about.
Yeah. And Chris, during that time, they were filming like WCW Saturday Night. A lot of that at Disney MGM Studios there in Orlando. And then the night that the NWO attacked Rey Mysterio backstage, some of the patrons of Disney saw it, thought it was a real fight, called the freaking cops, said there was a riot going on. The police, the fire department, everybody shows up. And man, it was real. I mean, it was for once in the wrestling companies, we had a lot of characters, but the NWO, like when they came in, they quit using their gimmicks and started using real names. Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan,
these people are fired up, man.
Yeah, because at this point they're like, okay, they're from the WWF and they have invaded WCW. We're watching WWE and we see Mankind and Bret Hart. Okay, that's scripted, but this stuff that they're doing in WCW, that's real, and people bought into it, and it became real. And dude, I remember when the NWO was first getting hot, and they came in for War Games. And they had the War Games there in 1996 at the Lawrence Joel Coliseum. I was there for that. It was the NWO.
I was there too. Yeah. The War. Yes, absolutely.
Man, you talk about heat when they brought out that fake Sting and then the real Sting came out, cleaned house. Man, that was it was tremendous. It was a tremendous time.
I don't know if wrestling could do that today.
No.
I just don't. I just don't think so.
No, it's going to take a bit to get there.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. But we're talking about a time in professional wrestling when, Tony, the money was still pouring in, and the NWO gimmick. I mean, listen, and I'm not going to lie to you. Hey, I think I came into the professional wrestling business at the right time because I made money off of that. I made
yeah.
money off of Stone Cold Steve Austin and the NWO because the independents were on fire, man.
Oh yeah, they were.
People wanted to just see wrestling because, and if you and I brought a guy in from WWE or even the WCW power plant or whatever was going on, they were coming. It trickled down all the way.
Yeah.
If you did it right. And man, it was a hot time, man. 96, 98, 99, even into 2000. Really, even up, really 9/11 was when 9/11 happened.
It shuts down. But
wrestling was on fire, man.
Mm-hmm. It sure was.
It was on rocket fire.
Because I know.
I mean,
when you were running the Thomasville Armory, you sold that place out.
Mm-hmm.
When I ran up the street from there, I sold it out. Whenever I ran the Boys and Girls Club in High Point, just a few miles away from Thomasville, I sold out. I mean, like you said, man, wrestling was the hotbed. And it didn't matter where you were at. All you had to do was put out a flyer that said pro wrestling. Boom, it sold out. I mean, it was almost that easy.
On Friday, Saturday night, you run a Friday night, you want to do an off show on a Wednesday or Thursday, a spot show, sold show, whatever you want to call it. Man, you're running Saturday night at 8 o'clock. It was on fire, man. You only needed one or two names, and you fill it out the show. I mean, it was a time. I don't know. I think the time now, it's still there. I think that anticipation is still there. I think the fans are much different. Obviously, we're talking 20, 25-year difference. It's just different now.
Yeah.
It's different on how to draw fans to the show versus when we were doing it. Now it's all social media. It's a whole lot different now. Overall,
yeah, it's really different. It's a different time, but I'm seeing a lot of things are new again. Mullets are coming back.
Yeah,
I mean everything's coming back that was once over and in style. So, so it's going to be great. I'm excited, but I think there's still a few hoops that we all got to get through, but I know for sure we're going to get there without a doubt. I mean, just my booking sheet has really picked up over the last couple of weeks. I haven't really had a South Carolina wrestling license in several years. I've got two promoters now. They're blowing my phone up. They're blowing up my Facebook. Tony, we need you, man. We want you here. So today I filled out my paperwork. I'm going to get my physical, get that sent in.
It's time to get one.
I'll have that because I'm booked to come down there and wrestle the Rock and Roll Express. I got to come down there and get step in the ring with Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. So I'm ready. I'm excited. And
Tony, I know and let me tell you right now, I know the competitor you are in the ring. And I know you have, if there's anyone in the pro wrestling business, and I'm telling this that has the utmost respect for Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, the Rock and Roll Express, the WWE Hall of Famers, it's you. But I know what? When you step in that ring and you put those boots through that squared circle, I know it's all business, brother.
Oh, it's business, but you're right, Chris.
And you're gonna push them like they've never been pushed before.
And the thing, right? Hey, and here's and here's something that a lot of people probably don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I have shared this story a few times on the podcast. But I'll share it one more time right here as we're talking about it. Ricky Morton, and I've told Ricky this several times. I don't think he even understands. I'm sure he does understand, but Ricky Morton is the reason I became a professional wrestler. In 1985, okay, Jimmy Valiant, everybody knows the story. He and I are close friends, and he trained me. He trained me. But I love Jimmy Valiant. I love him to death. But it was Ricky Morton that made me go, my gosh, I want to be a wrestler when I grow up. And it wasn't maybe just Ricky Morton. It was a fact that Ricky Morton was walking through the aisle in the Greensboro Coliseum, and by the time he got in the ring, half his clothes were ripped off of him, and the girls were losing their mind. And that's probably the reason why I wanted to become a pro wrestler. But
you're like, I want to be like that guy.
I'm gonna, yeah. Hey, listen, and I grew the mullet like Ricky Morton, and I patterned my selling after Ricky Morton. And right here, this is the gospel. I'm saying it's around on the Binge Buster show. But the one night that I got the highest compliment that anybody could ever give me came from Jimmy Valiant. I was wrestling one night as a babyface. Now, Boogie had never really seen me as a babyface. I was just healing all the time. But me and another guy teamed up to work these other two guys, and we were babyfaces. And I sold for the match. And when we got done, and I got in to the back, Boogie walks over to me and he said, "Brother," he said, "I ain't never seen nobody sell so good except for Ricky Morton." He goes, "But I think tonight you outsold Ricky." He said, "'Cause I thought you died out there and you made a comeback." He said, "But the way that you sold the shoulders and everything," he said, "Brother, that was Ricky Morton right there." And of course I had the mullet then, so maybe that's the reason, but that compliment meant so much to me. And
man,
and
it just sits with you, man. It doesn't go away.
No, it don't. And
no.
And I'm not a young buck anymore, and I've got a few more years left in me. So my goal right now is I'm going to try to get in the best shape of my life, and I have been. I've changed my eating habits, and I've started running more to try to build up my cardio. But all these bookings coming in, these promoters that are wanting me, I want to give them, their money's worth. So I'm gonna get in the best shape of my life, and I got to be in the best shape of my life if I'm going to be in the ring with Ricky Morton, because Lord knows I've heard stories from him when him and Flair were working each other, and Flair would tell him, "Hey Ricky, I'm gonna blow you up tonight." And Ricky says, "No, you're not." So I know Ricky can go, so I got to be able to go. So that's another reason why I want to get in great shape. So I got a lot.
So who's your partner for this thing?
I haven't heard yet. I'm still waiting to
a mystery partner.
A mystery partner, yeah.
That plays to your advantage.
All I know is the promoter said, "Hey, I want you on this date. It's going to be in September, there in South Carolina." So I'm putting.
So when in September, Tony? You know the date offhand?
I don't know the date right now, but I know it's coming up.
Yes.
Here, like it's in September. I know that. As a matter of fact, let me look through my emails here.
If the partner's some parts unknown, even better.
All right, I've got the date. The date is September the 11th. And it's in Rock Hill, South Carolina, at the Rock Hill High School. Tickets are only ringside is $15 and general admission's $10. There are going to be a tremendous amount of big stars going to be there. The Rockland Express are going to be there. Dion Johnson's going to be there. The Moonshine Express, Terrific Tony.
Oh, man.
I mean, AJ Frost, who was on our podcast a few weeks ago, he's going to be there. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people there, but I hope Ricky.
And you know what I'm thinking?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking maybe a live Binge Buster show there.
Oh yes, for sure.
Late afternoon,
live Binge Buster. Yes.
Oh man, from Rock Hill, and then Tony, I might have to just hang out with you that night.
Hey, I'm telling you, Chris,
man, this could get on in Rock Hill, man.
Hey, listen,
we might fight straight up 77 to downtown Charlotte. Take down the epicenter or something.
I'm telling you. Hey,
this thing not going to end at Rock Hill High School. I could see a fight going all the way up 77, uptown Charlotte. God knows who could show up from the Horsemen. Good Lord, this could be all night long.
You never know. But here's the cool, crazy thing about it. Eddie Trunk, who does this music podcast. He takes his podcast on the road. Hey, if Eddie Trunk can do it, the Binge Buster Show can do it too. So you never know, fans. Check it out. Keep your eyes out. You might see us live there at one of these big events. But Chris, I mean, as we wind down this week's show talking about the NWO, they finally kind of sizzled out when WCW was sold to WWE. After a year or so, Vince McMahon decides to maybe reinvent the NWO, bring them to the WWE. Brought them in for a little bit. That worked, but really all that NWO was really for was to get Hogan over and have him, bring him back into the fold. And of course, we saw Hogan take on The Rock at WrestleMania 18 there in March of 2002. And that was a tremendous event as well. But now fast forward to 2021, the NWO is now in the Hall of Fame. I went to WrestleMania this past year. They were there. It was an exciting time to see the NWO and see them back in, together. And of course, at this time, the NWO that was in the Hall of Fame, that's the NWO I feel like should have been the main NWO from the beginning. I'm talking about Hogan, Hall, Nash, and X-Pac. But congratulations to them by going into the Hall of Fame. But Chris, I'm telling you, the NWO, they were over, and they really, I mean, we could talk 10 more hours about the NWO.
Yeah.
But,
if I can say something, Tony, the NWO, they came in at a time when wrestling was really at a crossroads, I'm going to say, in the mid-90s.
Yes.
And it came in at a time that was really perfect for the business as a whole. I mean, WCW was trying to find themselves, and I think WWF too. But then what happened when Hogan went to WCW, it was probably the best thing for wrestling, because then Vince McMahon got his game together. He's like, I got to get my stuff together too here. And then it all exploded.
Yes.
But the NWO, there won't be nothing like it. That might be the closest to the Four Horsemen. There'll never be another Four Horsemen.
No.
And the NWO is not a Four Horsemen. But when I look at them, when they first started, the first few, they were kind of the Four Horsemen a little bit.
Yeah.
To an extent.
Ric Flair would go on TV, and I heard him say numerous times that the NWO was a cheap ripoff of the Horsemen.
I think it was, in essence. What bigger stars of 10, 12 years later, and then they were like, okay, but I think they also had this little dark mystique to them, the black and the white, and they were doing this and doing that, and they're doing the Sting angle, Sting up in the stands and the rafters and all this. There was a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it drew money for the business.
Big time.
And they milked it as long as they could. And then when the fans said, okay, we've had enough of this, then it kind of went away.
Yeah.
It's pretty much what it was. And it was a great time to be a wrestling fan. It really was, because then you had Steve Austin, then the emergence of The Rock. I mean, it was on at one point. It was like, whoa, between the two. And, hey, they had a choice back then in the mid to late 90s, excuse me.
Yeah. And Chris, one of the things I miss most about the NWO was when they'd have these little commercials. And I want to play one real quick.
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
I loved when they did that. They would always say the following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order,
right.
and then they'd go into those T-shirt sales or whatever they're selling. It was awesome. I loved it, and
right.
The NWO was a great time to be a wrestling fan.
Right. And if I can go on record, right now, I'm going to go on record right now. The Four Horsemen, the original four, right? You got Flair, Ole, Arn, and Tully, right?
Yep.
When I look at the NWO, you had Hall and Nash, right? If I'm not mistaken, then Hogan came in.
Right.
You had three big guys knocking down Savage, Sting, whoever else was hanging around. But let me tell you right now, they were three big guys in wrestling at that time. They were three big guys, and they were three names. And then they were three WWF names when they came over here. Tony, you can put me on record right now. The Andersons, Tully, and Flair, skill-wise, no way. They were heads way above those guys in the ring and outside the ring. Not even close.
No.
It was made, the NWO was made for television. Is what it was. Those guys, they want to go 60 minutes with Flair? I don't think Hall and Nash can do it.
No, there's no
They
way.
couldn't have did it back then.
Maybe.
I don't think Hogan could have went 60 minutes with Flair.
No way. Not even close.
So I don't even know what Anderson's. I mean, so that's where I'm coming from with this. You know, they were, when you say, they were a cheap ripoff of the Four Horsemen, because the Horsemen backed it up in the ring night after night after night. And if it was meant going 60, hey, if sometimes Flair and Steamboat went beyond 60 minutes.
That's right.
So that's where it was made for television back then, and they were booming off of the cable TV and everything else, and the Monday Night Wars going on. So it was a great time to be a wrestling fan.
Yeah, you know, the NWO, all those guys, Hall, Hogan, and Nash, they were just cool bad guys. And
they were.
And I think
and
Scott
they were
Hall,
big guys.
Yeah, but I think Scott Hall was probably the coolest. He got the most response when he came out and go, "Hey yo." I mean, the place would pop when he would do that. And then he would do
He was still doing some of the Razor Ramon gimmick.
Yeah, yeah.
There was still some of that Razor Ramon gimmick going on from the early 90s when he was doing that, when he was doing the Miami, Florida kind of, you know, Miami Beach kind of stuff.
Right, yeah. But
with
with
the toothpick in his mouth and stuff. People knew it.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people don't know this, but I'll tell you. When Scott Hall started doing the toothpick, Diamond Dallas Page gave him the idea.
Yeah,
which is cool. That's kind of an inside story. Well, fans, I hope you guys have enjoyed the 100th episode of the Binge Buster Show as we talked about the NWO and the Bojangles Coliseum here in Charlotte. Next week, fans, we're going to have a little treat for you. I'm not going to announce it right now, but you got to tune in next week, and I promise we will be. Now we're back on track. I got some things rolling. One thing, though, Chris, I gotta say this, okay? And I'm please, fans, don't think I'm coming across as a jerk. I just gotta tell this story, okay? In pro wrestling, we always hear about they signed a contract. They're in that contract. They're locked in that contract. So I gotta tell you about my contract experience. I ain't gonna mention no names. I'm just gonna tell you about my contract experience. Okay. In the great state of North Carolina and all the other 49 states, when you sign a legal binding contract, you are bound and held liable to carry on that contract obligation. Well, okay. I'm in the process of making a purchase, right? And this person signs a contract and gives me X amount of days to take care and pay for this item. And that contract stated that I would make this payment in full on I'll just tell you my house. Okay, I'm in the process of buying my house from this guy, And the guy calls me up and says, hey, I want to sell the house, and this is how much I'm going to take for it, which he gave me a great deal, so I really can't get too upset about that. But here he calls me up and says, hey, I want you to buy the house, and I want you to buy it. And he was giving me 2 weeks to buy the house, right? Well, during this pandemic, even when the pandemic ain't even happening, it takes a lot longer than 2 weeks to even get closed on a house, because you can't even. You got to get an appraisal. You got to get your financing through the bank. There's a lot of things you got to put together, and it's not like going to Walmart. Like I told this person, it ain't like going to Walmart and buying a packet of pens, okay? But this person wants me to close on the house in 2 weeks. Impossible. So, but I did get him to sign. But prior to this, we talked to the bank. The bank says, okay, we can close, but it's going to be August the 9th at the earliest. Okay, get your lawyer to send over documentation, sign the contract, and we'll move forward. So I get him to call my attorney. My attorney draws up the paperwork. He sends it over. This person signs the contract, says, yes, okay, I'm good for you closing on actually it was August the 13th, right? But anyway, so the person signs the contract like on a Monday, and then that Friday was the day that he thought we were closing. And so he calls me up and says, hey, we're closing tomorrow, right? I'm like, no, we're closing on August the 13th. He says, well, you just lost the house. I'm like, how'd I lose the house? He's like, because if we're not closing tomorrow, you got to pack up and move. And I'm like, actually, no, because I am currently in a lease. So you can't just kick me out, because my lease doesn't expire until the end of the year. But more importantly than that, I said, hey, we signed a legal binding contract stating that we're going to purchase this house on August the 13th. You signed off on it. If you have a problem, you probably need to talk to my attorney. And Chris, I've always wanted to say that to somebody. Call my attorney.
Damn.
But I said, call my attorney, and he says, no.
Right.
Pack up and get out of my house. I'm like, it ain't. Sir, I'm going to hang up the phone now. And the next person,
I've had enough of this mess.
The next, and I didn't cut a promo on him, even though I wanted to so bad. I was a complete and utterly gentleman. I never raised my voice, but I said, sir, I'm going to hang up this, because he was getting all loud. He was cutting a promo on me. But I said, sir, I'm going to hang up this phone. The next person that calls you concerning my affairs will be my attorney. He'll give you a call in the morning, right? So my attorney calls him.
He won't call you no more after that.
Nope. My attorney calls him the next day and says, hey, sir, you signed this contract. If you don't follow through, my clients have informed me to sue you for blah, 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 blah. So we're closing on the house on August the 13th. And it's just one of those things where, like, I don't get people. Our good friend George South says he hates people. Well, George, I know now why you hate people, because I'm almost there with you, George. Especially this fruit, But
George is a good man. George is a great man. He's loyal. Love the guy to death. George South is the absolute man, and he danced in the ring with the Nature Boy Ric Flair on many occasions.
Many times. So
not many people can say that.
Nope. So each week starting now, Chris and I are going to have something that's happened in our life during the week that pissed us off, and we're going to talk about it at the end of the show, and we're going to call it the South Slam, and paying respect to George South.
I got something that just pissed me off right now.
Okay, let's hear it.
Tony, I just picked up on something on television right now that you can't see.
Okay.
So the AEW repeat show from Charlotte just came on right now at 11 o'clock.
Oh.
Tonight.
I'm going to close up this podcast. I'm going to try to watch it then.
Yeah, but guess what sign I just saw? And I think it was a plant sign for AEW to promote themselves.
What did it say?
The sign said, you're in Flair country, right?
Yeah.
And then you think a fan really put an X through Flair and put AEW along the side of it?
Oh no, that's a plant for sure.
That's a fucking plant. They just part of my language. I should have said that. They just came on the air. They were showing, they do all their shots with the cameras, and there was a sign right there. You're in. They had an X through it. You're in AEW country.
Yeah. No,
come on now.
Come on, man. Hey, listen.
Come on.
This is if
some cheap heat.
Let me tell you, Charlotte will always be Flair and Horseman country. I don't care how. 100 years from now, they're still going to be calling this Flair country. Okay, come on now.
They might even have called the Nature Boy. Said, "You want to come walk the aisle tonight?" That I can't.
Hey, ladies, all girls 18 to 28, no husbands, no boyfriends. That was classic Ric Flair right there.
I will say this: Flair's got more memories in that building than any of the wrestlers in that building tonight.
Oh, brother!
Chris Jericho all the way down. He was probably all night long with a lot of them.
If those walls in that Coliseum could talk, it would be saying, you can't be first, but you can be next.
I mean, how do you think those guys were sitting back there tonight saying, wow, the Four Horsemen, Dusty, all that's come through here?
Right, exactly.
Really?
I would be back there rubbing the walls, hoping to get some good luck on my wrestling career if I was those guys, knowing how much talent has came through that building.
I don't know, but that was so there's my rant before the show goes off. I didn't notice that sign at 8:00. They just did the repeat. That's a plant sign.
For sure.
There's no way.
For sure.
Mm-mm.
No way at all.
Hey, you know what Nate says?
What's that?
Keep bringing it because my name's still on TV.
Hey, that's right. It doesn't matter. His name's still on national television on AEW. Flair is all elite, fans.
Well, Nature Boy probably whipped half of those guys in the ring.
Exactly.
In one night.
And all in one night. Well, fans, thank you again for joining us on our 100th episode. Chris, it's been a pleasure always recording with you and hanging out with you. And I know you and I are going to have some concerts coming up here shortly, and we're going to be hanging out. I think we got Kiss coming up next month up in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I'm looking forward to going and seeing Kiss, and hopefully you and I can do an after party afterwards, but it's going to be a good time.
Oh, man, Tony, I can't wait, man. We got so much stuff coming up. This has been a great 100th century show. I can't believe it's been 100 shows, Tony. My gosh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy for you, man, because this was just an idea, something you wanted to do. So it tickles me pink that you kept me along the way. And you say, hey, Chris, come on, record, do this, do that. We got a show. So thank you so much. Yeah, concerts are coming, and we're going to be partying throughout the summer, right into the fall of 2021. It's
going to be great. Well, fans, make sure you go like us on our Facebook page, and we'll see you or hear you, listen to you. You know what I'm trying to say. We'll see you next week, fans, on the Binge Buster Show.
Thank you for listening to the Binge Buster Show. Make sure you like us on Facebook and download us on your favorite podcast platform.